Yes.
All right. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Real Estate Millionaires. How you can become a real estate millionaire by listening to Mr. Ray, right? I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about how you can be a real estate millionaire, baby. You have come to the right place. And today we are in our advanced class. For all you advanced students, you've been with me for a little while, and we're taking it to the next level, baby. We are taking it to the next level. And today, I'm going to teach you how to be a wholesaler. Maybe one of your goals is you want to wholesale. You don't have a lot of money. You've been trying to figure out how to get in this game. And now you thought, well, maybe wholesaling is the way to go. Well, Mr. Ray is going to show you and tell you how you can be a wholesaler. Now, this is not a game for everybody. This is serious business when you're talking about wholesaling. But let's go ahead and get into our presentation tonight. Our ground rules are continue to be. Everybody's going to stay muted during the call. Please ask questions. You know, the only dumb questions is the dumb questions that you don't ask. All right. I think some of y'all are scared to ask questions because, oh, I don't want to appear like I don't know what I'm talking about. Well, if you don't ask questions, that tells me that you're not really growing. So don't be scared. Everybody's in this together. We're all here to learn. And I need you to ask questions because I'm going to assume you know certain things. And so that's not a good place for me to be when you're assuming. So make sure you give me some feedback also on how I can make this better. You know, this is my second edition. I'm getting better and better each time. I'm filling out what you guys want, what you need, what's relevant, what's irrelevant, and trying to make sure that I'm bringing value to the game and that you guys are really getting fed what I need to feed you in order for you to be successful real estate investors. So our agenda for today is we're going to talk about what is wholesaling. We're going to figure out what is wholesaling. You heard a lot of people talking about wholesaling. What is it? And then we're going to actually walk through the process. I'm going to show you how to be a wholesaler, right? We're going to dig deep, baby, and we're going to find out all about what wholesalers do and how they are successful. We're going to talk about the pros and cons to wholesaling. How can you, if you decide to be a wholesaler, how you can be successful? And then we're going to do the math, baby. It's all about the math. Don't fall in love with the houses. I need you to fall in love with them houses. And then I'm going to give you some of my thoughts about wholesaling. All right. So first of all, before we get started, there's a disclosure I have to make. I'm not an attorney, although I always wanted to be an attorney, but I never went and got I never went and got the schooling. Right. At the time, I could have got my MBA with the JD, but I did not. Just went ahead and got the MBA. So I am not an attorney. I'm not a CPA. I do understand accounting principles. I do know how to do sheets, etc. But I am not a CPA. I'm not even a real estate agent, baby. I'm not any of that. All I am is a coach, a mentor, a teacher, a motivational speaker, and sometimes a rogue real estate investor, baby. I'm just out there making that money. And I'm trying to teach other people how to do the same. So don't be out there telling anybody, hey, Mr. Ray told me to do this, told me to do that. Yeah, I'm giving you advice, but I am not an attorney, a CPA, a real estate agent, right? But I know everything that they know, but I am not certified. So let the buyers beware. But I'm going to give you some good information today that you're going to be able to take away and get out there and get in this game if, in fact, that's what you want to do. But I got to start with a Rayism. Circumstances don't make the man, they simply reveal him. Think about that. You always are out talking about you're this, you're that. But whenever the chips are down, when the going gets tough, who are you really? Well, whenever circumstances are tough, when things are not going the way that you think they should go, that reveals who you are at that moment. It's not when things are going great. It's not when everything is good, you got money in the bank. It's when things are not so good. It's when people are difficult. It's when you got to deal with difficult situations. That's when we reveal who you are. All right, so let's define wholesaling here, right? So when we talk about wholesaling, we're talking about, as a wholesaler, you're basically contracting with a homeowner, the seller, and then you find an interested party to buy it. So in effect, the wholesaler contracts with a buyer at a higher price than he did with the seller who he bought it from in the first place, and he gets to keep the difference. All right, makes sense? Maybe not yet, but really the key to wholesaling is you have to find distressed properties. All right, these are not properties for the most part that are on the MLS, that are out there on Zillow. These are properties where you're working directly with the owner to get the property at the least cost that you can, so that you can take that house and then turn it over to someone else at a higher price. All right. So there's been some questions that's been raised in certain parts of the country and even here in Oklahoma. Is wholesaling legal? Let's talk about that. There are those that say that wholesaling is illegal because they say that a wholesaler is acting as a broker, and if you act as a broker, then that requires a license. And that's why we have real estate agents, right? You have brokers and real estate agents, and they are by law, they are sanctioned, they are licensed to be able to broker a deal between a home buyer and a seller. But then there are those that say, no, it's pretty much legal because I'm not really acting as a broker. I'm simply signing a contract and I'm assigning it to somebody else. So in essence, I'm only selling my equitable interest in the property because I don't really own the property. I just have an instrument that says I have a right to buy this property and I have a right to sell it. So whether it's legal or not depends on some technicalities. Are you in fact the owner of the property and selling it to somebody else? If you are, then you are operating as a broker. But if you're only selling your equitable interest, most say that's legal, and you can do that in the state of Oklahoma. So let's see if we got any questions so far on that.
I have a question.
Yes.
So if you take a property under contract, is it for a length of time? So like 30 days, if I don't find a seller, then
yes,
it goes back to.
So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that. So usually when you make a contract with a seller, there's only a certain time period in there. It can be 30 days, can be 10 days, whatever you put in there, that's the amount of days that you have to sell that property, or you lose your interest money, right? Your earnest money. Make sense?
I have a question as well on that. The part where you're talking about the wholesaler is acting as a broker. So acting as a broker here, you're saying if you own the home and you're selling it to another, that would be considered a broker. Can you go over that one more time?
Okay. So some say that if I'm buying, if I'm representing, let's say I'm the wholesaler and I'm representing to you as the person that I'm selling the house to, that I own the property, then I'm acting as a broker. If I'm telling you, I'm selling you my interest, my equitable interest in the property, because the deed's not in my name, nothing's in my name, but I have it under contract to buy it for a certain price, but I'm going to sell it to you at a higher price, then I'm just wholesaling and I'm not acting as a broker. It's a technicality, and we're going to get into it. And I know you guys are going to have some more questions, so let's keep going. Keep those questions coming, but I got to keep moving or we're not going to get through this. So what are some of the benefits of wholesaling? First of all, you don't need any money to get started, right? You just get out there in Bird Dog and you find these houses that you can get for pennies on the dollar. That's how you get started. You never hold the deed to the property. You never have to close on the property in order to wholesale your equitable interest in the property. You don't need a real estate license. Again, now I'm telling you, in some states you do. They don't care. But if you are one that you live in one of the states that say you can't do this wholesaling without a license, and you need to be aware of that. So your state's laws around that. In the state of Oklahoma, there's still a lot of wholesalers out there, again, because they're not putting the property in their name. And so they're kind of getting around it, the technicality. They don't actually own the home, right? So they don't really say they need a license. You're simply the middleman in the transaction. And it can be very lucrative. If you can generate and get these houses under contract and pass them off to other investors. What are some of the characteristics of a good wholesaler? Well, you got to be able to find these good deals, baby. You got to be able to market. You got to be able to get out there and get properties under contract for 30, 40, 50% of the after repair value. So one of the things that you really got to do is you got to know how to do deals and talk to people and get these houses under contract and move them fast. You got to be really good at estimating the after repair value, because that's going to help you to determine how much you're going to be able to sell it to a flipper or else to another buy and hold investor like myself. You got to be very good at estimating, again, rehab costs. What's going to be the cost to rehab these properties? You got to be good at estimating what the potential rents are in the properties. And then you got to understand what the math is. And I'm going to take you through an example what the math is, so you can make sure that you're getting properties with the right amount, so you can flip them to a good person that maybe in fact is going to flip it themselves. So you flipping and then somebody else is going to flip it, right? So it's two flips going on when you're a wholesaler. But the only difference is you're not doing any repairs. You're not putting the property in your name. You're simply getting the property under contract and selling. You got to understand the math behind a good rental, and we're going to go through that. And you got to like talking to people that are in distressed situations, people that are in dire need to sell their home. You got to be able to go in and to negotiate and be compassionate, to show sympathy, so you can get these people to trust you and believe you that you are going to do the best for them, that in fact, if you don't buy this property, that you're going to find somebody else to buy this property from them. And then you got to be good at negotiating with people without taking advantage of them. So what's some of the pros and cons to wholesaling? Well, you earn some profits in a short period of time. I mean, you can get a house under contract 10 days later, you can get that thing closed if you're dealing with cash buyers. And that's mostly what you're going to be dealing with when you're selling these properties, your interest to other people. You're going to learn a lot about the real estate industry that you didn't know, because you're going to be dealing with stuff. We're going to be dealing with contracts. You're going to be trying to estimate what the value is of the property, what the expected rents are, what the repairs are. You're going to learn a lot. And then, one of the pros is it's accessible to those that have limited cash or no cash and don't have good credit. So this is a good way to get in the real estate game, but it's hard. It's not easy, because you got to know what you're doing. Some of the cons is it's hard work finding these distressed property. They're not easy to find. So you got to get out there and you got to work hard to find them. And, income can be very unpredictable. You might find a house this week, but it may be 2 months before you find another one. If you're not actively out there getting houses and keeping them in the loop so you can continue to have money coming in. It's dependent upon you finding buyers. And these buyers, again, are mostly cash buyers. They don't have time for you to wait to run down to the bank to try to get financing. You have to be dealing with cash buyers. And a lot of times these buyers lists can be difficult to maintain because they come and they go. So we're going to go through the wholesaling process step by step. But before we go, I want to ask, are there any questions right now before we step into the actual process? All right, here we go. Here is the wholesale process, baby. This is what you've been waiting for. So stage number one. So there's going to be a contract that's going to be written between the wholesaler and the seller. So you went out, you bird dog, you found this property, you got it under contract. The ARV is $100,000, and you have convinced the seller to sell it to you for maybe $50,000, right? And so you write up the purchase agreement with the assignment language in there between you and the seller. So the contract is between the seller and the wholesaler at this point. And so how does it work? How do you find these distressed properties? So first of all, you got to find property that's significantly below the market value. I'm not talking about, $100,000 property for $90,000 you get under contract. You're not going to make any money as a wholesaler. You got to be below the 50% of the ARV value in order for you to make these type of deals work. And you'll be looking for people. There's two types of people that you're looking for here. You're looking for the type of person, that first one, that they need to sell. That is, they have a house that they want to sell it now, quick, fast, in a hurry, because maybe they're moving or their mother's ailing and they've got no other family in the area. But then you're going to be also selling to people that want to sell. They're just curious to see how much their house is worth because they may be selling next year. The persons that you want to identify here are the people that need to sell. The person that wants to sell, he's kind of iffy and he's not willing to deal with you on price. But if somebody needs to sell, those are the types of people that you can find, and usually you can get good deals there. So you got to get out there and you got to find motivated sellers. Again, determine if they must sell or they just want to sell. That means you're going to have to be talking on the phone. You got to get out there as you're driving, as you're leaving notes on people's houses, as you're interviewing people. You got to be able to talk to them and have a script. Now, I'm not going to go through the script today, but I have a script if you're interested in how to question someone that calls you that may be interested in selling their home on a wholesale basis. You got to build trust with the seller. You have to understand how to negotiate and get to the best deal that you can get, knowing that your long-term goal is to sell this property to someone else. Again, you got to do the math, and I'm going to take you through the math here in a minute to show you how wholesaling works. Don't fall in love with those houses. Fall in love with those numbers. Do your math. And then you got to get that property under contract. You can't sit around, you can't wait and think about it. As soon as an interested seller is interested in selling those properties, you have to get those properties under contract because there's going to be somebody coming in behind you that's going to be trying to do it. And then also you got to do your due diligence. Whenever you find a property, first thing you got to do, you got to make sure that you're dealing with the owner, that they are in fact the owner of right to that property, and you got to make sure, how much is owed on the property, or their mortgages on it, or their second mortgages on it, is there tax liens on it, have they been divorce filed? You have to do a quick and dirty title search to see if this title is going to be a marketable title that you can sell to someone else. And then you got to be good at preparing inspections or bids, right? You got to be able to eyeball these houses and determine what work needs to be done so that you can put that into your formula as you're figuring out what your maximum allowable offer that you're going to be able to offer on that property. And then you got to be good at assigning that contract to an investor. You have to convince an investor to pay you more than what you just paid for it. And then get the deal signed, get it to closing. So who are the sellers? Who are these people that you're going to be buying these wholesale properties from? Well, there's going to be homeowners that are in tax default, right? If they haven't paid their county taxes, they're behind on their taxes, they have no means to pay their taxes, they're going to lose that home to the sheriff, to the county sale if they don't pay those taxes. They're 3 years in behind. So you can negotiate with those people. Homeowners that are in pre-foreclosures. These are people, the bank has sent them a notice, they got 90 days, they're going to be foreclosed on. They are very, very willing to talk to individuals that have cash that are willing to buy their property so they don't get foreclosed on. And that's where wholesalers a lot of times come in and will make these cash offers. Homeowners that may be going through divorce. I mean, they have to sell assets, and so they're going through a divorce. Homeowners that may have lost their jobs. Again, these are people that are going to be highly motivated to sell their home. Homeowners that are in probate. Somebody died, a husband or wife. Now they're in probate, and they got to sell those properties. Properties that appear to be vacant and run down, they got high weeds, the windows are boarded up, I mean, just in disarray. These are the types of properties that wholesalers are looking for. Homes that may have been listed with the real estate agent, or maybe they just put it on Zillow or something, but they haven't been able to sell it. So these are homes that usually have been on the market for 90 days or more, and they haven't been able to sell. And sometimes because the owners don't have the money to fix them up, to make them look good, so they can't get them up the ARV. Again, a lot of times they just haven't been able to sell the property because they're not in a good location. And then homeowners that live out of state, you know, they inherited some property, their parents may have died and they inherited the property, but they live out of state. Those are key people that you need to be talking to that possibly will want to sell their property at a discount. And then other landlords, hey, they've been in the business a long time. Hey, they just want to get out of the business, baby. Let's just get out. I don't want to deal with this anymore. So these are a list of sellers that you're going to be looking at contacting when you're a wholesaler. So any questions before we move on? All right, let's keep going. So stage 2. So you got the property under contract. And so the wholesaler now has to go out and find somebody to buy that particular contract under the terms of the original purchase agreement, right? So the wholesaler finds an outside investor who wants to buy the property according to the terms of the purchase agreement. So let's talk about that a little bit. So who buys these wholesale properties? There's 2 types of people that buy these, and they're investors. And so they either go out and get these hard money loans, they have private loan money, or they're using their own money, right? These are cash deals. You don't say, okay, I want to buy from, but I need to run down to the bank and it's going to take me 30, 45 days to close. No, you are not an investor that the wholesaler is going to want to deal with. He doesn't have time to allow you to go down and get pre-approved and do all the screening that it takes to get. He needs his money in 7 to 10 days, no more than 20 days is normally what they want to close these deals on. So where do you find your buyers at? So you work with real estate agents. There's a lot of investors out there that work with real estate agents. So you get in contact with these real estate agents, and they know who some of the investors are in the area, and you hook up with them. You can publish, let's say you get a house under contract, a wholesale contract, you can publish that listing on some sites. You can put it on Zillow. As long as you inform the seller that if you don't buy it, you'll find somebody else to buy it, then it's okay for you to list that property out there for sale. You can host an open house and just let investors come in, take a look at your property, and make you cash offers right there on the site. You can attend real estate investing network events. A lot of investors are there. So you're looking to find investors, hand out your card, let them know that you get wholesale deals. You can find deals for them. You can create a website where you can capture your leads there. You can send people to the website and say, hey, here's where I got my wholesale deals. And I'm going to show you one of those sites here in a minute where a wholesaler has a site out there and he posts all his wholesale deals. And then you just network with other wholesalers and bird dogs. You know, bird dogs are people that they just, you know, they could be utility workers, they could be mailmen, they could be anybody, just anybody out there that you know that's roaming around, that's looking for property. They don't want to buy them, but they can turn you on to it and you can buy them. So those are what we call bird dogs. And then you can participate in real estate social media groups. I mean, there's stuff online, Facebook, they got Instagram. I mean, they got all kind of people out there. A lot of people are buying property, and you just got to figure out how you can get your name out there, that you're a wholesaler and that you're going to have property to sell to these investors. All right, then stage 3, finally. You got the contract, you have an investor. Now you get the investor to give you a deposit and lock in the second part of the contract. So you have the assignment agreement with an outside investor. He puts the deposit down and then replace the wholesaler as the new buyer, right? So the wholesaler was the buyer, but now you have an investor. He is now becomes the new buyer. So let's talk about selling to investors. So when you're selling, say you buy the house, now you got to figure out what is the price that I can sell to an investor. So I bought it for $50,000. I want to make a little bit of money on it. So how much money can I make? Can I sell it to the investor for $60,000 and make $10,000? Can I sell it to the investor for $55,000, make $5,000? You got to determine how much can you make. So let's start with the maximum allowable offer. So in order to determine the maximum allowable offer, you always start with the after repair value, the ARV, right? That's what the property is going to be worth after you fix it up, right? So from that number, we need to subtract all the costs that's associated with the deal, right? So you got the ARV, you start there, and normally flippers are looking at 70% of the ARV is where they need to be, right? And then you got to figure out how much is the repair cost to fix up the property. Are there any fixed costs associated with holding the property? Sometimes there's utilities, you got property taxes. I mean, you just have things, you got to keep the grass cut, all these fixed holding costs that you're going to have as they hold the property to get it repaired. And then you got to figure out what your profit is, how much you as the wholesaler want to make on the deal. And so it kind of looks like this. So the maximum allowable offer is the ARV, the after repair value, times 70% negative the repair costs, negative the wholesale fee. So let's look at an example. So here's an example. So if the ARV in this case was $110,000, let's just assume the property is worth, after you repair it, $110,000. And this is, I'm going to show you two methods. This first method is called the fixed cost method. And I'm going to show you another method here in a minute. So the fixed cost method looks like this. So you have the ARV at 110. Let's assume that the investor likes to make $20,000 profit on any deal that he does. And let's also assume that he has $15,000 in fixed costs. The repair cost is going to be $30,000, and you put your fee in for $5,000. So you have a total of $70,000. So you subtract the 110 from the 70, the maximum that you can offer on this property to a seller, that is the person that you're buying the property from, is $40,000 in this case. So that's roughly 36% of the ARV. Now that's the fixed cost method. Now, there's another method, we call it the 70% method. So you take the ARV times 70%, negative repairs, negative the wholesale fee. It looks like this. So our same example, ARV is 110,000. 70% of 110 is 77,000. Repair costs is 30,000. Wholesale fee, in this case, we're gonna say it's just 5,000. So you got a total 55,000. MAO, using the 70% rule, is $42,000. But if you go back and use the cost method, the cost method is $40,000. So the difference is only about $2,000. So that tells you using both of those methods is still going to be about the same. Your maximum allowable offer that you can offer a seller on that property is going to be close to $40,000. Let me share with you guys. Let me share with you guys something here. So this is a spreadsheet that we can use if we're a wholesaler. So let's start with the maximum allowable offer calculation. I'm going to use the same numbers that I just showed you in the presentation. So in this case, we got the $110,000. We're using the 70% rule here. Here's the fixed cost calculation over here. So let's start with the 70% rule. So we have $110,000. We say 70% of that is going to be that 77,000. We're assuming, again, the rehab costs are $30,000. So the estimated cost, the estimated price to a flipper is going to be $47,000, right? That's what we're going to be able to offer to a flipper. But in order for us to determine what we're going to do as far as what we're going to offer the seller, now we've got to put in our fee. So our fee is going to be $5,000. And so the estimated MAO, again, is going to be $42,000. We already figured that. I showed you that. Now, the fixed cost, we said was $40,000. Use the same type formula. Again, 110, you add in your fixed costs, what the profit is for the investor, estimated cost, that's the cost that the flipper is willing to pay. But you remember, you're going to buy it from the actual seller for $40,000. So you're going to get your $5,000 in there. So that's what it looks like on a spreadsheet. Now, if it was a buy and hold investor you were selling to, it wasn't a flipper, you can add in a percentage. Let's say you just add 10% on top of that. And so the buy and hold, you sell it to the buy and hold guy for $51,000, and your fee would be $9,700. So let me stop right there. I covered a lot on that. Are there any questions on these calculations? You guys got this? I can't believe it. Y'all just not wanting to ask questions now. Come on now. Somebody's got some questions.
I have a question. Oh, why is I don't know if I missed it, but the buy and hold, why did that change it?
The buy and hold?
Yeah.
You're gonna get a little bit more money from your buy and hold. And I'll show you here. So let's go back. Let's see. So I'm gonna go through each one of these tabs here so you can understand what it is. And I'll be willing to share this spreadsheet with anybody that wants it. So the first thing you do when you get the property, you got to figure out how much is it going to cost you, how much is it going to cost the end buyer to fix this property up. So you would go in and put all your costs in here, right? Kitchen, miscellaneous. You can go room by room, each room, ceilings, floors, doors, a whole nine. You put your numbers in there, it'll give you the estimated rehab costs right here. Now you can pad it 10%, 15%. You change your numbers here, then it could be 22,000. You can say, I like to use 15% as over and under because you never know what you might not run in. So that's the estimation part where you're figuring out what it is it's going to take to get this property up to the ARV. And you can share this with your investors. The next calculation is you're going to be figuring out what the comps are to determine what the ARV. So you're looking at properties that's recently sold in the area. Let's look at this first comp right here. So that's the address, that's the square footage, number of rooms, baths, etc. Year it was built, shows when it was sold, and what the sale price is. So you look at all those sales prices on those properties, and you go over here, and you'll see what the average is. Let me make this a little smaller. So the average property is probably selling, it looks like average AAV for these properties, when you put them in, is 177,000. I didn't put those in for my properties. This is just an example. These will come with default. So you can put anything in yellow, you can enter those, all right? So you come up with your ARV. You came up with your MAO. I just showed you this sheet. And so the flipper, again, he's interested in how much is this property going to be worth. So when you look at the flipper, his ARV, again, this is not my example for 110. These are just defaults that were in here. So if I put, let's say my estimate was 110 in here, then I can plug in my other numbers, right? So the wholesale price, in this case, is 50,000. The rehab was 30,000. So the total cost that the investor would be in this property for would be 83,000. Assuming that he can sell it for that 110 that we said, he can make a profit of 26,000. So that's with the 70% rule. The fixed costs over here are pretty much the same. Again, it's going to give you what the wholesale price is, what the wholesale is going to pay, what his rehab is going to be, what he's all in for, and then hopefully he can sell it for this and he can make this profit on the money. So your question goes back to the buy and hold. You say, what's different from a flipper and a buy and hold? Well, what's different is the buy and hold guy. He's buying it, and you have to show him how he's going to make money, let's say, over the next 5 years with this property. So you'll show him what the comps were in this area. And so here's the potential. This is the rent comps. This is how much he can rent it for. Each one of these properties has a different rent. This one's asking $950, $1,200, $925. You say, how you find these numbers? They're out on the market. You go out there, you drive the neighborhood, you look at Zillow and find out all the properties on the market for that particular area, and you would punch them in here. And then you come down here and you say, okay, well, we expect the rents to be $1,100 because the average rent over here came out to be $1,084. So we'll just round it off to $1,100. You plug in just some vacancy rates. It can be 2 weeks, 4 weeks. I mean, that's just subjective. I normally use 4 weeks that the property probably could be vacant during the year. You put in what the annual taxes are, what the repairs, insurance, all that good stuff that we've talked about before. And then the purchase price, you put in whatever the purchase price. Let's go back and say he purchased it for the $42,000 that we talked about earlier. And then we'd have some estimated closing costs. Total equity invested, we're going to say he paid cash. So it's 100%. He paid cash for this deal. So there won't be no interest rate. We could do it and figure out what his payment would be, but we're just going to assume he paid cash for this. His renovations we talked about, we said 30,000. So we'll put his 30,000 in there. And then there might be some other renovations that we, again, it could have been 5% more than the 30,000. But at the end of the day, he wants to be able to say that ARV is 110,000. Now you can show him what his, over the next 7 years, you can show him how much money he can make. So you see at the top, that's going to be his income that he's getting in rent at $1,100 a month. You already put in his vacancy for him in year one, the property taxes, the maintenance, the insurance. At the end of the day, he's got 9,000 in net rents, right? And so at the end of the day, he's got 9,000 in cash flow because he owns it free and clear. Now let's go back up here and say, let's say he put, he's going to get a loan on the property, which really doesn't happen. So let's say he got a loan and the loan was he bought it for 42, a bank gave him, he only had to put 20% down, so the loan was 34,000, 4%, let's say 15 years. Now you go down here and the loan payment now is in there, right? You see the loan payment goes in, now his cash flows are looking more like this. So you can play around with this and it gives him a good idea on the type of money that he's going to make on this property. So that's the difference between what a flipper is looking at and what a buy and hold guy looks at. As a buy and hold guy, I look at this. If I'm a flipper, I'm simply looking at the 70% rule, right? So I'm looking at how I can get in it for this. So I know I've said a lot. Now it's time for the questions. Did I answer your question? I know that was a long-winded expose, but Laura, did I answer your question?
Kinda. I was just curious, why did the wholesaler make more money on a buy and hold investor versus a flipper? It makes me want, if I'm gonna buy a property from a wholesaler, tell him I'm flipping it so he don't, charge me more. He was charging the flipper 40 something for the property. He's charging the buy and hold person 51,000.
But you wouldn't know that as the end buyer.
I guess so, yeah.
Right? So these are numbers he's got in his mind. He's just trying to sell it. Really, he's trying to sell it to whoever he can for the most money. So if he can sell it to the buy and hold guy and make $9,700, he's going to do that. But if he can sell it to a flipper and make $5,000, he's going to do that. So it's a difference about $4,200.
Okay.
And these are examples, these are estimates, these can be real numbers if you got properties, but again, you have to play with these numbers as a wholesaler and figure out where's the sweet spot so you can keep properties moving. Questions? I'm not hearing any questions.
I got a question, Mr. Wright.
Yes, sir.
So on the contract part of it, just trying to, what do you suggest as far as getting more information on how to structure the contract and to make it valid? Because that's my concern, is that it wouldn't get down in there and then have everything going, and then the contract, it has some loopholes in it, not knowing if it's are valid, or if somebody defaults on the contract, what power does it really have? What's your information or thoughts on that?
Okay, that's good. So let me see if I can pull up a contract here. Pull up a contract. All right, let me see if I can share this contract with you. So here's a contract. This would be a contract for sale of real estate. So this is the contract that you would sign with the prospective seller. And here's the key words that you got to have in that contract. As the buyer, now you have to have after your name buyer and or their assigns, heirs, successors, administrator as the buyer. So that's putting, it should be putting the seller on notice that you're the buyer, but you can assign this to someone else, right? And there's another key piece of the contract. There's this contingency here. It says that this agreement is contingent upon the purchase of the above referenced property from the owner of record. So again, you got to verify you're dealing with the owner of record. The buyer agrees that their funds may be used in the acquisition of the above referenced property, whatever the property is. In the event that the said closing fails to occur between the buyer of record and the seller, the only remedy available to the buyer is the refund of their earnest money, right? So now your question is, I think it was, what if you can't find a buyer in that time frame, right? And let's say you had 30 days to sell the property, you don't find a buyer. Well, you basically lose your earnest money. If you put up $200, $500, $1,000, then you basically lose the right to that earnest money. I think that was your question, right?
That it was in that form, but also on the other end, that if somebody is, if I find the buyer and then they decide to go around the contract or try to say, well, that's not valid or contested, or, you know, go around the contract, like. Yeah,
which contract? The contract that you have with the seller?
Yes, yeah.
They can't go around that contract. That is a bona fide document. When they sign this deal, you have equitable interest in the property, and that seller cannot sell it to anyone else.
Okay.
During that period, 30 days, whatever days you have in here, right? So you go down to the contract and it says this agreement shall be accepted on these dates at this time. After this time, then, you know, all deals are off. But during this time period, he can't sell it to anybody else.
Okay. Okay. That answers my question. Thanks.
Okay.
I don't really have a question, but it's kind of a comment, I guess, on wholesaling as a rule. But one of the things to keep in mind with wholesaling is that it's not a quick situation. So one way that I've heard it put this way is that out of about 100 offers, you might get 10 people bite and actually get a signed contract, and out of the 10 signed, you might end up with one that actually closes. So it's something to, you'll get a lot of stuff that you go out and you try to find, you go try to knock on doors, whatever, and out of anybody who calls you about your ad or whatever, you know, you might only have a few of those where you actually get a contract signed. So it's not really, you know, expect you get started and a month later you're going to have sold 5 houses or anything until you really get going with it. It's kind of a long-term game.
It's a numbers game. It is. You got to actually get out there and probably, I would say you got to put out 100, 200 flyers just to get one buyer. I mean, get one person that's willing to sell to you. I mean, it's a numbers game. It really is. It's a hard business, but again, if you can find houses cheap, man, you can get out there, you can make some money. But it's hard. I mean, again, let me go back to, there's one more thing I want to share with you guys that I didn't share. Let me share this with you. So let's talk about this assignment. If assignment is indeed allowed, you have to include that provision in the contract and clearly explain that you, as the buyer, are a real estate investor and that you intend to assign this contract to a new buyer. Have the seller initial that provision, and this reduces the likelihood that the seller is going to object to a new purchaser and attempt to back out of the agreement. Assure them, again, that they're still going to receive the agreed upon purchase price. So here's the key, is you got to be open and honest with the person you're buying this from. A lot of these wholesalers don't tell people this, right? They don't tell them that they're going to sell the property. They tell them they're going to buy the property, and then they run out and try to find somebody else to assign it to. And that to me is the unethical piece of it. I think if you're upfront with people and say, hey, look, I want to buy your property. I want to buy it, you know, at the best price that I can. But keep in mind, if I don't sell this, if I don't buy this property within 30 days, I'm going to sell it to someone else in that 30 days. And if I don't, then I lose my earnest money. So I think if you make sure that you're doing it that way, I think you'll be good. Now, there are some properties that can't be assigned, right? If you try to do this with HUD properties or REOs, these are properties that are owned by banks or properties that's listed on the MLS, you won't be able to do wholesaling, right? Because they cannot wait on you to do a loan. In fact, there are some strict rules that the FHA and banks have against doing wholesaling. So those properties are totally off. You have to do deals directly with the homeowners. You're not going to find these deals out there on any website, okay? Another word here, in an assignment, you will simply write in the space, and I've showed you this on the contract, by the buyer's name and or assigns after your name. That means that gives you the ability to assign. This means that you or someone else can assign the contract, can assign this contract to somebody else who will buy the property. That's very key. Again, remember, the wholesaler isn't selling the property because he doesn't own it. Rather, he's selling his equitable interest in the property. So just make sure you understand that.